Okay, guys, now we're going to get into step 4, which is all about building and defining your brand. So, we're going to start with clarifying your niche and your expertise. Now, you should by now already have a reasonably clear idea of your expertise, which is your unique mix, which we worked together in the first step, and what it is you're trying to achieve by building your personal brand. Now, there is wildly different advice these days when it comes to identifying your niche. My opinion is that it's dependent on so many different factors. So, your industry and your occupation, your specific knowledge, your target audience, what you're trying to achieve by building your personal brand. That your niche could be as defined or as broad as you want it to be. For example, I mean, my niche is branding. Now that's pretty generalized, but I deliver breakthrough branding. So I deliver branding to humans who want to live bolder lives, people that are trying to live bigger, live into their truths. So you can see it's probably not for everyone. It's not for people that are trying to place more. But I'm looking to help as many people as possible develop their brand. So I haven't niched down any further than that. Now, if we talk about crafting an authentic online presence, authenticity, what exactly does that actually mean? Now, authenticity is defined as being true to your own personality, spirit, or character. Please don't feel pressured to be someone else just because you think that's what's expected of you in your industry. It is way too easy this day and age um, to be swayed by that and by what other people are doing because we constantly have our competitors' brands or other profile accounts pushed in our faces every day. Now, the chances are that if you're watching other people in your industry or other competitors, um, if they have any ads running, you better believe their retargeted ads are going to be targeting you. So if you can't get them out of your face, that is why. It's because they're retargeting you. So just don't be swayed by what other people are doing. Unfollow, turn them off, clear your cache or whatever you need to do. Just don't get swayed by what other people are doing. You need to be honest and true to yourself. So share your honest story. People connect with real people and not with perfection. So in my case, something that always really resonates with people and that they love is when I talk about, so just for a bit of background, my personal experience, I've got 20 years in the fashion industry. So therefore, I have been made redundant 5 times, being the volatile industry that it is. Now, when I talk about being made redundant 5 times, it really resonates with people. They love to hear it. They love to understand how I've bounced back from it. What tools I've used to kind of work my way out of it. And to be honest, it's a real story that people can relate to. And I think in that particular instance, that maybe not many people would potentially talk about. I mean, I'm not ashamed of it. So yeah, I mean, that's me being truly authentic. So when you are truly authentic, it shows and people can tell. Now, if we move on to visual branding, so when we talk about visual branding, there's kind of 2 parts to it. It's you and your personal style, and then it's also your digital aesthetics, so your colors, your logos, your fonts. Now, I spoke a little bit in the beginning about your personal style and your visual aesthetic being kind of like your shop front. So, this is the first thing that people see when they come into contact with your personal brand. By paying attention to this, we have the opportunity to positively influence the way that others perceive you. So, starting with your personal style, your personal appearance, ask yourself these 3 questions. One, does my personal style reflect the person I want to be? It's not who I'm being now, but reflect who I want to be. Number 2, does it mirror how I feel inside or how I want to feel when I'm being that person? And then number 3 is what values am I projecting? So my mother famously once said, I'd rather be 5 minutes late and turn up looking put together than be on time looking like a hot mess. Okay. Her words were slightly different. I don't think she said it exactly like that, but that's how my mind replays it. And just to be clear, we are a very punctual family. But you get the sentiment. For me, it also comes down to respect. So self-respect, respect for yourself, and then respect for others. Now, this could be controversial, my opinion, But I will never understand the people that pop to the shops, or even worse, on the school run, still in their pajamas. I don't understand it. It's the same concept as there's a really famous speech by a man called Admiral William McRaven, and he says in his speech, Google it on YouTube if you haven't seen it before. If you want to change the world, start off by making your bed. Now, what he means by this is if you can't do the little things right, then you'll never be able to do the big things right. And I think there's a really, really key message in there. If you project yourself well, you present yourself well in public, then you're already giving yourself that first step to success, in my opinion. Now, when it comes to your digital aesthetics, any colors that you use in your logo or your fonts, etc., these should all really be aligned with how you project yourself as a brand. So, are you really bright and fun and a breath of fresh air? Or are you a bit more serious and some more kind of somber colors would suit? Now, consistency here is absolutely key. In terms of tools, Canva, you've probably heard of Canva, but it is an excellent tool that anyone can use to develop a brand kit. Within the actual software, you've got the option to develop a brand kit. So you can add in your logo, your colors, and your fonts. So you can then easily apply these to anything that you're working on in the software. But if you have your own business and you can afford the outlay, I do recommend getting logos developed professionally because they can just create better, slicker, and more original ideas. But to be honest, Canva is an absolutely brilliant place to start. Now, if we move on to your tone of voice and your messaging. Now, your tone of voice is essentially the style that you use. It's how you speak to your audience. It's the style that you use to communicate your brand's values, personality, and then the emotional tone to your audience. So it's a key part of your identity. It's the common thread that links up your messaging, your visuals, your content, your product offerings. Really, it's how you connect with and how you speak to your audience. So in personal branding, your tone directly links to how you are as a person and how you want to be perceived by others. So, do you want to come across as joyful and friendly, confident and refined, amusing and light-hearted, or just relatively neutral and direct? Now, generally, people kind of know the way that they are and their natural way of speaking, but if this one does have you stumped, the work that you did earlier of asking your trusted friends, families, colleagues about you, it should have hopefully thrown up a few points about your personality that you can think about for your tone of voice. And to be completely honest, I think the best way to figure out your tone of voice is just to start writing. So that moves us really nicely onto talking about the importance of good storytelling and good story structure. Building your personal brand is really, I mean, storytelling is just a fundamental part of it. It's the essence of it. It's how you communicate everything through the beauty of story. Um, so when you have to think about it in this way, when people read your content and they internalize it, they read it as if they're being spoken to. So write exactly how you would speak to someone else. Don't over edit it. Again, my best advice for this would just be to start writing, practice writing. I personally use Google Docs and also Notes on my iPhone. And I just jot things down as they come to me. So I mean, we obviously need to talk about ChatGPT and AI in this conversation. So you can use ChatGPT for ideas, for content structure, and things like that. But for the love of God, please don't let it write for you. It's always, especially on LinkedIn, it's one of my pet peeves. It's always massively obvious when something is written by AI and people just switch off. They just don't read it. So they want to hear from you. Again, it's authenticity, it's telling your story. So, again, like for example, I would use AI to help me structure the points that I want to talk about. But then within that, I edit it, I take out what AI said, and then I write it myself. So it's a good tool to help you progress in your business and do things faster. But when it comes to storytelling, just don't use it. Please, please, please. So, some key points that I want to get across about storytelling that I think you need to keep in mind. The first one is short and sweet always wins. Now, it's no secret that people's attention span these days is just absolutely minimal. It's shocking and it's awful, but it's the truth. So, if you want to write your life story and it looks like War and Peace, just chop it down into separate pieces of content and then you can release it as separate parts. So for example, in practice, when you're writing, just write, let it flow out. But then when you're editing it and you're using it as content, just keep in mind that it needs to be short and sweet. Now, second kind of tip is that bullet points are even better. So, for example, on LinkedIn, a good storytelling is you start with a hook and then tell a little bit of the story, and then you might write bullet points about what you've learned from the experience or what your product offers, and then you finish it off. So, bullet points get people's attention. It's much easier for them to read, and it's very easy to get what you're wanting to say across with bullet points. Don't be afraid to use emojis. I'm a massive emoji fan. And yes, even on LinkedIn, it is absolutely okay to use emojis these days. Just don't overuse the rocket because that one is very overused. I'm guilty of it myself. So when you are structuring your story, you start with a hook. So you start with a statement, a question, or a sentence that sparks curiosity. Again, if we refer to my redundancy situations, the hook for that I think I've used a few times is would you believe me if I told you I've been made redundant 5 times? So it's a sentence, a question, or a statement that's going to spark curiosity with your audience. Now, a good story has a beginning, the hook, a middle, and then an end. So at the end is either another hook or what we call a CTA. CTA stands for call to action. So you are calling your audience to action something. So either book in a call with me, DM me for more info, ask them a question about what they think. Basically asking your audience to do something. So that is what is considered kind of good story structure. Now, if we talk about crafting your personal brand story, a key part of your content and what you're going to be putting out into the world is telling your personal brand story. So, this is writing content that tells your story and it combines your unique mix into your key messaging and preferably in a way that your audience can relate to you. So, even better and more points if you can link your personal brand story to the same wants, needs, or challenges of your audience. So, something I always try to bear in mind when I'm telling my own personal brand story is how is this going to help others? So, if I'm telling a story about a challenging situation that I've had, I'll try and always include what I've learned because that is then going to help other people if they find themselves in that situation. So, an example is so people don't want to see pictures of my kids and hear what they had for breakfast, but they do want to know how I juggle being a business owner and a working mother. Another example is that people don't want to know what route I took on my morning run, but they do want to know how I fit it into my day, what strategies I used, and what strategies I used to push through being able to, from not being able to run a few kilometers to being able to run a 10K. What are they going to learn from my story? How am I going to be able to help them? So always try and think about what value that you're adding for someone when you tell your own personal brand story. Now we're going to move on to talking about your social media strategy. We need to talk about your social media strategy. It starts with choosing which places where you're going to be showing up. So there are a lot of platforms out there, but you are going to need to pick a lane. Unless you are doing this full time, my advice is it's impossible to do more than 2 really well. So you're just going to spread yourself too thinly. If you're just starting out, I would recommend choosing just one platform and do it properly. And then you can layer in another once you've nailed the first and you're comfortable with it. So in my case, I specialize in 2 platforms, Instagram and LinkedIn. Now, these are the 2 that best align with my personal brand, with my business, but also for my future goals. Now, I do also have a TikTok account. However, in all honesty, it's hard keeping up with two platforms, let alone three. So it could be something that I look at developing later on in the future, but for now, I'm just focusing on two. So pick the platforms that best align with what you're looking to achieve, or the ones that best align, the one or the ones that best align with your industry. Now, you probably already have an idea on where you want to show up, but your options are LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, then you've got Threads and Twitter, YouTube, and Pinterest. So let's talk about optimizing those social media profiles. Once you've chosen what platform is best for you, you then need to set up your profile page or tidy up what you already have. Now, it is very rare these days that people are completely starting from scratch. So we're going to come back to tidying up old profiles in a minute. Now, I have a huge amount of tips on optimizing your profiles, which are specific to LinkedIn and Instagram. But I'm going to give you my top tips for optimizing your social media profiles, which are universal and go across all of them. So the first one is be really clear on who you are. So who you are, what you do, and who you help. Now, there's no point trying to be too fancy or too funny, although a little humor does go a long way sometimes, depending on how it's used. It means that people just might not know what you're offering. You have to be really clear about you, what you're doing, and your audience. The second point is make sure you are SEO searchable. So this means including it kind of ties in with the first part, to be honest, but including keywords for your industry, for what you do, for what you're trying to achieve, or your target audience. The third point is don't have a crappy profile picture. It's surprising how many people are trying to build a personal brand with a really crappy profile picture. Now, just make sure that it shows you, it's in line with your personal brand. It doesn't always have to be the professional headshot like we keep being told, but just be really aware of your industry, your audience, your personal brand, and how all of that kind of fits together. So don't forget your profile picture on social media is like part of your shop front. The other point in terms of images, so on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, you are able to upload a cover photo. So don't leave this blank, it just looks unfinished and unprofessional. Make sure that your cover photo is relevant, again, to your industry, your audience, what you're trying to achieve. But if you're stuck, just choose a stock image and you can come back to it later on. The fifth point is about consistent messaging. So make sure your messaging about who you are, what you do, it's consistent across any of the platforms that you're on. So if you're selling products and services, it just confuses people if they see different information on one profile to another, and it's just not really that clear on what you do. So if we talk about tidying up your existing profiles, this one is especially relevant, I think, for LinkedIn because it used to just be seen as more of like a recruitment or a job hunting platform, but it's now become so much more, and it's really great for creating a public profile, personal branding, and for generating business for many, many different industries actually. So if you've chosen your main platform as say Instagram or TikTok or Pinterest, for example, just make sure that you update your old profiles no matter whether you're using that account or not. So keep in mind that some people or potential clients are going to Google you. So it will be quite confusing for them if the information on a page which isn't active is outdated, or it's not what you say you're doing on Instagram. It's quite simple and easy to do. The last point is about utilizing special features. So I can only really talk about my specialist platforms in this instant, but all social media platforms have specific features that you can really take advantage of. So for Instagram, you've got the highlights, and then which are highlights of your stories, and then you've also got pinned posts, which you can pin to the top of your profile. So use these to introduce yourself, to showcase your products, and give something that really works as some behind the scenes juicy bits. So all audiences on all platforms want to see that. They love to see the unedited raw stuff. So really utilize those special features within Instagram. On LinkedIn, you can utilize featured posts, and then also you can add in more detail into my services to really double down on what you can offer for your audience. So, as I said, those are really just kind of touching on the universal points and a little bit specific to LinkedIn and Instagram, but hopefully that gives you kind of a platform and a base on how you can optimize your social media profile.